Henry Moore had always believed that peace could be found in simple routines. At 63, with the heat of firefighting long behind him and the ache of widowhood softened but not gone, his life had settled into a quiet rhythm. Each weekday afternoon, he climbed into the driver's seat of bus number 17 and ferried a crowd of middle schoolers home through the oak-lined neighborhoods of Savannah, Georgia. It wasn't glamorous work, and Henry didn't care. There was something grounding about it. The chatter of children, the thump of backpacks, the squeak of rubber soles on the floor. For those few hours, he wasn't just a man living alone with framed photos and morning coffee for company. He had purpose. He had names to remember, corners to turn, and kids to look out for. But lately, one child kept catching his eye. A girl who seemed too quiet for her age, too still, Maya Thompson. She sat alone, always in the third row on the right, her small frame barely filling half the seat. She had a halo of dark curly hair and the kind of eyes that noticed everything but said nothing. On her first few rides, Henry figured she was just shy, maybe new to town, maybe homesick. But then, he started to notice the pattern. Every day, around the halfway mark of the route, after the bus grew quieter and the louder kids had spilled out onto their driveways, Maya's shoulders would start to hunch just slightly. Her chin dipped, and if you looked closely, just for a moment through the rearview mirror, you could see the faint shimmer of tears tracing down her cheeks. She never made a sound. No sobbing, no sniffling. Just silent, glistening sadness. Henry told himself not to assume anything. Kids had bad days. Maybe she missed a parent. Maybe school was hard. But the way her pain lived so privately, so predictably, gnawed at something in him. It wasn't just a bad day. It was every day. One Wednesday, the first clouds of fall floated heavy over Savannah. Henry was guiding the bus down Miller Street, a quiet stretch lined with modest homes and overgrown fences. The usual noise had dulled to a low hum. He adjusted the rearview mirror and glanced back at the third row. That's when he saw it. Maya was bent forward sharply, leaning over as if trying to retrieve something beneath her seat. But she didn't come back up right away. Her shoulders shook slightly. It wasn't the stretch of a child chasing a pencil. It was the posture of someone trying to disappear. A strange stillness settled in Henry's chest. He knew that posture. He'd seen it once before, years ago, when pulling a little boy from a burning trailer who'd tried to hide under his bed rather than escape. There was a kind of stillness that didn't belong on a child's body. That night, Henry couldn't sleep. He sat in his kitchen long after the sun had gone down, his calloused fingers wrapped around a chipped coffee mug, his eyes staring blankly at the window above the sink. The house creaked around him like it always did when the wind changed. But the silence felt heavier tonight, thicker. He kept seeing that little bent figure in the third row, the trembling, the tears. Henry wasn't one to jump to conclusions. But he'd lived too long, seen too much, to chalk something like this up to imagination. The next day, he woke earlier than usual. Shaved a little closer, put on a crisp, clean shirt beneath his bus jacket. He moved slower, more deliberately. He couldn't name it yet, but something was shifting inside him. He wasn't going to just drive today. He was going to look. If this story moves you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Heart Touch Stories. Leave a comment below, because kindness deserves to be seen. The next afternoon, the air in Savannah hung heavier than usual, a sticky breeze curling through the bus windows like it had secrets to whisper. Henry Moore felt it before he understood it. Something was going to change today. He tapped the wheel gently, as he always did, humming a half-remembered Sam Cooke tune while the kids climbed aboard, each one calling out their hellos with sticky fingers and loud voices. Maya didn't say a word. She never did. She moved the same as every day, quiet, tucked into herself, her frayed backpack hugged tight to her chest. Third row, right side. She sat down and looked out the window like she was somewhere else already. Henry's eyes flicked to her in the rearview mirror more than once as the route wore on. He noticed how her fingers gripped the seat in front of her, how she winced when a boy brushed past her too quickly, how she started to shrink into herself again when the bus emptied halfway. When the last child stepped off at the edge of Oak Street, leaving the bus silent except for the hum of the engine and the soft hiss of the closing doors, Henry let the brake hiss a little longer than usual. Then, slowly, he stood. He didn't know what he expected to find as he walked down the aisle. Maybe nothing. Maybe guilt. But the memory of that moment yesterday, Maya bent over, trembling, burned behind his ribs. He moved toward the third row and knelt slowly, his old knees creaking in quiet protest. He peered underneath. There it was. A pink lunchbox dented at the edges with faded stickers peeling off, princesses and cartoon animals, their faces scuffed away. It had clearly been there for days, maybe weeks, tucked back where no adult would casually spot it. Someone had wanted it to stay hidden. Henry reached under the seat and pulled it out. It was heavier than it looked, his gut twisted. He popped the latch. Inside lay a broken flip phone, its screen cracked like a spider web. Next to it, a strip of pills, half empty. Henry didn't recognize the name on the label, but the warning stickers were enough to set off alarm bells. And then, nestled in the corner like a forgotten truth, was a crumpled piece of paper. He opened it slowly. The handwriting was childlike, shaky. "If you tell, they'll take you away and Mama will disappear." Henry stared at the note for a long moment, the words sinking like stones into his chest. Something inside him locked into place. A memory, sharp and unwelcome, rose to the surface. A girl from decades ago, back when he volunteered at a fire safety program at the elementary school. That girl had come in with bruises and fear in her eyes. Henry had tried to raise the alarm, but the principal back then had brushed it off. Overreacting, they'd said. Some kids are just dramatic. 2 weeks later, her father had been arrested for abuse no one could ignore. Henry had sworn then, if he ever saw something again, he'd speak up. No hesitation, no second guessing. He sat in the driver's seat for a moment, lunchbox on his lap, heart pounding. The obvious step would be to call the school, tell the guidance counselor, report it through official channels. But Henry had been around long enough to know how systems worked, how things could get filed, how some cries for help got buried in bureaucracy. So he pulled out his phone and searched one name, Naomi Reyes. She'd ridden his bus 20 years ago, sat in the very seat behind Maya's, sharp as a tack, full of questions. He still remembered the way she'd once lectured him about tornado drills and why they should update the first aid kits. She was a detective now, Savannah PD, and more importantly, someone he trusted. He hit call. "Detective Reyes." "Naomi," he said. "It's Henry Moore. You remember me?" A pause. Then, "Mr. Moore, the bus driver?" "Of course I remember. You used to give me bubblegum on test days." "I got something I need to show you," he said quietly. "And I don't want this getting lost in paperwork." Naomi's voice shifted. "Where are you?" He gave her the address and stayed parked in the empty lot near the edge of Maya's apartment complex. 15 minutes later, a dark blue sedan pulled up beside the bus and Naomi stepped out. Older now, with sharper features and a badge on her hip, but the same determined eyes. Henry climbed down with the lunchbox in hand. "I found this under the little girl's seat," he said, passing it to her without flourish. Naomi opened it. As she examined the contents, her jaw tightened. When she read the note, her voice dropped low. "This isn't just sadness, Henry. This is survival." Henry nodded once, his mouth a tight line. Naomi looked up at him. "Do you know where she lives?" He pointed toward the worn-down apartment buildings across the lot. "Third floor, end unit. She walks in slow, like she's afraid of being seen." Naomi gave a short nod, already reaching for her radio. "I'll get someone from child welfare on standby. But first, we're doing a welfare check." Henry didn't say anything. He just watched as Naomi slid back into her car, the lunchbox resting on her passenger seat like evidence in a quiet war no one had noticed until now. He stood by the bus door, arms folded, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the pavement. For a moment, he closed his eyes and pictured Maya's face, those big, silent eyes full of something far older than her years. He opened his eyes. He wasn't just a driver anymore. He was a witness. And maybe, just maybe, a lifeline. The apartment building was the kind of place people didn't look at twice. Peeling paint, cracked sidewalks, and a broken light bulb flickering above the third-floor stairwell. As Detective Naomi Reyes approached the door to Unit 3C, she motioned for her partner to hang back. Henry stood near the base of the stairs, arms crossed, the deep lines in his face carved deeper by worry. She knocked twice, waited, knocked again, harder. "Savannah PD, welfare check." From behind the door came the shuffling of feet, the clink of a bottle, then a voice, slurred and defiant. "What the hell do you want?" Naomi didn't flinch. "Open the door, ma'am." It opened just a crack, then swung fully, revealing a woman in her late 30s. Denise Thompson, thin, disheveled, mascara smudged across her cheek like war paint. Her breath reeked of vodka, and her eyes darted in unfocused circles. "There a child here?" Naomi asked. Denise laughed, bitter and loud. "Maya's around. She's fine, just watching her shows. Y'all always picking on single mothers." Naomi stepped inside, calm but firm. Her partner followed, a hand resting near his belt. The apartment smelled of old food, mildew, and something harder to name. Neglect, maybe. Emotional rot. In the corner of a sunken couch sat Maya, curled up like a question mark, arms wrapped around a matted teddy bear, her face blank. She didn't flinch at the voices, didn't turn at the sound of the door. She just stared at the television, which blared a cartoon far too cheerful for the room it filled. Naomi crouched beside her. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm Naomi. You remember me from the bus today?" Maya nodded, barely. "Can you come with me for a little bit, just to talk? You're not in trouble, I promise." No response. But she stood, teddy bear clutched tight. Behind them, Denise was still rambling, now to Naomi's partner. "You people always think you know everything. Kids cry, it don't mean nothing. She's just dramatic, like her daddy." Naomi didn't respond. She guided Maya gently toward the door, whispering to the girl as they descended the stairs. Henry stepped aside when they passed, but Maya paused, just for a second, and looked up at him. There it was again, that quiet recognition. They drove to the station in silence. Naomi sat up front, Maya in the back seat, legs swinging. She still held the bear, clinging to it like it was the last solid thing in her world. At the precinct, they led her to the family services room, a drab space with tired green walls and an old vending machine humming in the corner. Henry waited just outside the room, shifting from foot to foot, unsure if he belonged. But when Maya saw him through the glass, she walked straight over and sat beside him. No words, no ceremony, just sat. He offered her a juice box from the staff fridge and a packet of saltine crackers. She took them slowly, hands trembling. They sat together in silence. A while later, a social worker named Clara came in with a notepad and a tired but gentle smile. She crouched in front of Maya and began asking simple questions. "What's your favorite animal? Do you like school?" Soft answers. "Cats." "Sometimes." Then Clara asked, "Can you tell me about the pills in the lunchbox?" Maya looked down. Her fingers twisted the wrapper of the crackers. After a long pause, she said, "Reggie gave them to me." "Who's Reggie?" "Mama's boyfriend. He said I cry too much, said I act like a baby. He made me take them when I got scared." Henry's jaw clenched. He looked away, blinking fast. "Did your mom know?" Clara asked softly. She just turned up the music real loud. She never watched. I don't think she cared." A long silence settled over the room. Then Maya whispered something so quiet, Clara almost missed it. "I hid the box so he wouldn't find it." Henry looked at her then, his voice rough. "You were brave, Maya. That was smart, really smart." She didn't answer, but she leaned a little closer to his side. An hour passed. Paperwork was signed. Phone calls made. Clara explained Maya would be placed in emergency foster care for the night. Maya said nothing, but her eyes dimmed. Henry stood, cleared his throat. "Is there any way I could stay nearby tonight? Just sit with her until someone arrives. I know I'm not family, but maybe I could be company, familiar." Clara hesitated. "You're her bus driver?" "I've been watching over her every day. I just didn't know it yet." She exchanged a glance with her supervisor. There were rules, boundaries, but sometimes kindness made its own space. "All right," she said finally. "You can stay in the break room, just for a while." They moved Maya into the smaller, quieter space. It smelled like stale coffee and copier ink. Henry settled into a worn recliner while Maya curled up on a faded couch, wrapped in a county-issued blanket. He didn't try to talk. He just sat, present. Hours passed. At one point, she dozed off, bear clutched tight, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Henry didn't move, not even when his leg fell asleep. When the foster rep finally arrived, a woman with soft eyes and a warm smile, Maya stirred. She sat up slowly, blinking. The woman knelt beside her. "Hi, honey. I'm Mrs. Carter. I'm going to take you somewhere safe tonight, all right?" Maya looked to Henry. His voice cracked when he spoke. "You're going to be okay, Maya. And if you ever need me, I'm not going anywhere." She nodded. Then, to everyone's surprise, she reached out and took his hand, small, trembling, trusting. Clara watched them, something unreadable in her eyes. "She doesn't do that," she whispered. "She doesn't reach for people." Henry just squeezed her fingers gently. In that moment, he wasn't just her bus driver. He was her anchor. For the first time in years, Henry Moore found himself looking forward to the weekends. Not for rest, not for television or lawn work, but for the visits, for the soft knock on the door of a modest foster home in a sleepy Savannah neighborhood. For the moment, Maya's face would appear in the front window, tentative at first, then slowly lighting up when she saw it was him. He never came empty-handed. Sometimes it was something simple, a coloring book, a bag of grapes, a pack of new pencils. One Saturday, it was a soccer ball with bright neon stripes. Another time, it was a secondhand storybook about brave kittens that he found at a yard sale. But perhaps the most special gift was a pair of white canvas sneakers, tiny and light, printed with small yellow daisies. The same kind that had once been stitched into the design of the backpack Maya no longer carried. When she opened the box and saw them, she didn't say a word. She just ran her fingers across the print, eyes wide like it was something sacred. "You remembered?" she whispered. "I did," Henry replied, "because you matter." There was no grand announcement, no sudden transformation. Healing came slowly, quietly, like dawn inching in through a frosted window. At first, Maya only spoke when spoken to. She answered questions in single words, but she listened, intently, thoughtfully. She watched how Henry sat, how he waited, how he never rushed her. Over time, her words came back, then her laughter, then stories, lots of them. She told him she liked cats because they know how to hide but also how to come back when they trust you. She told him she wanted to be a vet when she grew up, or maybe a school counselor, because she wanted to help little kids feel brave when nobody else sees them. Henry never pushed. He simply showed up, again and again. He was there when she had her first session with a child therapist and waited quietly in the reception area with a crossword puzzle in his lap and a worry in his chest. He was there at her first soccer game with the community league, cheering so loudly when she made a clean pass that other parents turned to smile at him. He was there on rainy afternoons when the sky felt too heavy and all Maya wanted was to sit by the window and draw. She'd grown to love art. She filled sketch pads with animals, houses, clouds, and sometimes people. On one page, she'd drawn a girl holding a lunchbox with her eyes closed tight, and next to her, an older man in a cap holding her hand. She didn't name them, but she didn't need to. One Saturday, as they sat on the back porch painting with cheap watercolors, Maya paused. Her brush hovered midair, dripping blue onto the page. "Mr. Moore," she said, not looking up. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." She dipped her brush back in the water and set it down. "Would it be okay if I called you Grandpa?" The question caught him off guard, not because he hadn't thought of her that way already, but because hearing it aloud made something in him tremble. His breath caught in his throat. He looked at her, this small, brave girl who had walked through fear with quiet strength. "You know," he said slowly, voice rough around the edges, "that would make me the proudest man alive." She smiled. A small, radiant smile that shone all the way to her eyes. From that moment on, she called him Grandpa. Not Mr. Moore, not Henry, just Grandpa. The world outside continued its spin. Court dates came and went. Investigations proceeded. Reggie, the boyfriend who had threatened her, was finally arrested after another report surfaced. He was charged with endangerment, possession of unauthorized medication, and child intimidation. Maya didn't attend the hearings, and she didn't ask to. Henry only told her what she needed to know. "You're safe now, and he won't come near you again." As for her mother, Denise, the court mandated rehab and psychological evaluation. During one hearing, in a moment of rare clarity, she whispered that she wasn't ready to be a mother, that she had failed in ways too heavy to carry forward. Tearfully, she relinquished custody. It was a complicated mercy, but it opened the door to something better. Months after that first phone call, After the lunchbox, the bus ride, the juice boxes, and quiet companionship, Maya stood beside Henry in family court. Her hair was neatly braided, and she wore a lavender dress with white tights. Henry had traded his worn bus jacket for a navy blazer that still fit from church Sundays. The judge, a silver-haired woman with a warm smile, looked over the documents. "Mr. Moore," she said, "I see here you've passed all background checks and home inspections. And Maya," she smiled kindly at the girl, "you've said you'd like Mr. Moore to be your guardian?" Maya nodded, a little shy but certain. "Yes, ma'am. He's already my grandpa." The courtroom chuckled gently. "Well then," the judge said, stamping the final page, "it's official." Henry reached out and took Maya's hand. The courtroom disappeared. He wasn't just a bus driver anymore. Wasn't just a man who once sat behind a steering wheel humming soul songs. He was a grandfather, a guardian, a safe place. And Maya? She was no longer just the quiet girl in the third row. She was his girl now, whole, seen, loved. Later, as they walked out into the sunlight, Henry said, "What do you want for dinner tonight, Miss Maya?" "Pancakes," she grinned, "with strawberries on top." "You got it," he said. "Anything for you?" She looked up at him. "Even on a Tuesday?" "Especially on a Tuesday." The twist wasn't dramatic. It didn't involve headlines or fanfare. The twist was that kindness, steady, quiet, inconvenient kindness, had rewritten two lives. And nobody saw it coming, except maybe the girl who hid a lunchbox beneath a school bus seat, and the man who decided one day he wouldn't just drive, he'd look. The farmer's market was buzzing with its usual Saturday morning energy, mothers juggling toddlers, retirees inspecting jars of homemade jam, and vendors shouting over the hum of friendly conversation. The crisp Georgia air hinted that autumn was near, but the warmth of the sun still lingered, bathing the stalls in golden light. Henry Moore stood near a basket of golden pears, watching Maya Thompson as she darted from table to table, her curls bouncing with every step. She was wearing a soft yellow cardigan, a gift from her foster mother, and a simple beaded bracelet on her wrist. Plastic stars, faded letters, and a single red heart that caught the sunlight when she moved. It was the same bracelet Maya had once hidden in her jacket pocket the night police took her from her mother's apartment. Back then, it had been broken, the string frayed, several beads missing. But now, it was repaired. She'd sat for hours at the community center's craft table, carefully rethreading each piece like she was sewing her story back together. A neighbor from the market stall beside them smiled at Henry. "She's yours?" the woman asked kindly, pointing toward Maya. Before Henry could answer, Maya turned around, her eyes bright and steady. "That's my grandpa," she said. "He found me when I was hiding." Henry felt something in his chest give way, not in pain but in awe. He managed a quiet smile and nodded. "Sure did." They walked home slowly, taking the long way around the block, past the park where Henry had once taught Maya to fly a kite, and the library where she now loved to check out books on animals, planets, and drawing. The canvas tote Henry carried swayed with each step. Inside were honey sticks, a small potted succulent Maya had named Lucy, and a jar of peach jam they'd picked out together. Maya skipped ahead, then stopped suddenly, turning around. Her face was more serious now. "Grandpa," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." She lowered her gaze and scuffed her sneaker against the sidewalk. "Do you think he'll ever come back?" Henry didn't need clarification. He meant Reggie. It was the first time she'd brought him up since the final court date. Reggie had been sentenced to 15 years, no parole for the first 8. Henry knew the facts, knew the system. But fear didn't operate on logic. It lingered, especially in children, hiding in the corners of comfort. He paused, then crouched so he was eye level with her. "Even if he did," he said slowly, "you're not that scared little girl anymore." She looked at him, eyes wide, searching his face for something she couldn't name. "And I'll always be right here," he added. "That's a promise." She nodded a little shakily and reached for his hand. They walked the rest of the way in silence. That evening, after dinner, pancakes with strawberries and whipped cream, Maya's favorite, Henry sat on the front porch sipping his tea while Maya curled up in the porch swing with her sketch pad. She was drawing a dog she'd seen at the market, a golden retriever with a blue bandana and kind eyes. She hummed as she worked, tapping her pencil against her lip thoughtfully. When it was time for bed, she brushed her teeth without complaint, chose a book from the shelf, and crawled under the quilt in her lavender room. Henry sat beside her, reading the next chapter of Jasper the Brave Raccoon, a story she'd grown fond of. "Grandpa," she murmured, as he tucked the quilt around her shoulders, "you think people can really change?" Henry thought for a moment. "I think people can learn, sometimes the hard way, sometimes too late. But yes, I do think they can change." Maya nodded slowly. "I hope Mama changes, even if she's not my mom anymore." "She'll always be your mom," Henry said gently. "But now you have room to choose what kind of love gets to stay." Maya rolled to her side, her bracelet catching the light from her night lamp. She touched it softly, then looked up at him. "Thank you for seeing me, even when I was trying to disappear." Henry's throat tightened. He reached down and brushed a curl from her forehead. "Thank you for letting me." She was asleep before he reached the door. He stood there for a long moment, watching her breathe, the slow, steady rhythm of peace. The nightlight cast a gentle glow across her cheeks, and the room smelled faintly of lavender and something else. Safety. In the hallway, Henry paused. His hand rested on the doorframe, his shoulders heavy in the best kind of way. Sometimes, he thought, we spend our lives looking for purpose, thinking it lives in the big moments, the awards, the careers, the heroic acts. But maybe it's quieter than that. Maybe it's a juice box in a waiting room, a sketchbook in a grocery bag, a promise made on a cracked sidewalk. Maybe it's showing up, again and again. He whispered into the stillness, a thought more than a prayer. Sometimes, the smallest cries hide the deepest strength. And sometimes, love finds you, in a lunchbox. The following week, they attended a fall festival at Maya's school. She wore the daisy print sneakers and carried a paper lantern she'd made in art class. Henry helped her hang it above the community garden, and she beamed when the principal complimented her work. "She's come a long way," the teacher said, eyes warm. "She sure has," Henry replied, "and she's just getting started." Back home, Maya placed a small drawing on the refrigerator, two figures holding hands beneath a tree. One tall, one small, both smiling. She titled it in neat letters, "Not all heroes wear capes, some drive buses." Maya's journey has only just begun, but now she's no longer alone, and neither is Henry. Thank you for watching Heart Touch Stories. If this story touched you, share it with someone who believes in second chances. Leave a comment, subscribe, and let's remind the world, kindness saves lives.